In the small village of Tandala, there lived a woman named Zawadi, a mother of 3 beautiful children. Her life was far from easy. Her husband, Juma, was a lazy man who spent his days lounging around the house, barking orders at Zawadi, demanding food, and criticizing her efforts to provide for the family. While she toiled in the fields and did odd jobs to make ends meet, Juma sat idly, oblivious to her struggles. Their children often went hungry, and Zawadi's heart ached for them. But Juma cared only about his comfort, berating her when she couldn't provide enough. One evening, after another exhausting day, Zawadi sat by the river, crying quietly. Her hands were blistered from working the fields, and her feet sore from walking miles to collect water. The burden of keeping her family afloat weighed heavily on her, and she feared that soon she wouldn't have the strength to carry on. As she wept, a strange elderly woman appeared by her side, seemingly out of nowhere. She wore a long cloak, and her eyes glimmered with an eerie, unnatural light. "Why do you cry, my child?" the woman asked, her voice like the whisper of the wind. Zawadi wiped her tears and explained her situation, how her husband did nothing but criticize her while she worked tirelessly to feed their children. The old woman listened patiently and then smiled, though her smile did not reach her eyes. "I know your pain, Zawadi. I can help you. There is a way for you to gain wealth beyond your imagination, but it comes with a sacrifice." Zawadi's heart leapt at the mention of wealth, but fear tugged at her gut. "What must I do?" she asked, her voice trembling. The old woman beckoned her to follow, leading her deep into the forest where no one dared to venture. They arrived at a dark, secluded cave, and inside, Zawadi saw a massive snake, its body coiled like a giant rope and its scales shining like wet stones in the moonlight. The snake's eyes gleamed, watching Zawadi with an unsettling calmness. "This serpent is no ordinary creature," the old woman explained. "It holds the power to grant immense wealth, but in exchange, it demands a price. You must lie with the snake, satisfy its desires, and in return, it will provide you with gold and jewels." Zawadi recoiled in horror at the thought. The very idea was revolting, but then her mind drifted to her children, their gaunt faces and empty bellies. If she didn't do something soon, they would starve. And if she didn't provide, Juma's cruel words would only get harsher. After a long pause, Zawadi made the hardest decision of her life. She agreed to the old woman's deal. For 7 nights, Zawadi returned to the cave to fulfill her dark bargain with the serpent. Each time, she felt a deep sense of shame and disgust, but in the mornings, she found gold coins and precious gems left at the mouth of the cave. With the newfound wealth, she bought food, clothes, and even renovated their small home. The children no longer went hungry, and for a brief moment, Zawadi thought she had found peace. But Juma, ever the cruel husband, grew even more demanding. He spent the money frivolously on alcohol and luxury, boasting about their sudden fortune without once questioning where it had come from. He even began to ridicule Zawadi more, accusing her of not doing enough, despite all the sacrifices she had made. "Is this all you can bring?" Juma scoffed one night as Zawadi handed him a pouch of gold. "You claim to be working so hard, but I don't see much effort. Are you lazy like the rest of the women in the village?" Zawadi's blood boiled. She had endured enough. She had sacrificed her body, her dignity, and her soul to feed their children, while Juma did nothing but criticize and spend their wealth recklessly. The serpent's deal was meant to save her family, but it had only deepened her misery. The guilt weighed heavily on her heart, and the serpent's gaze seemed to follow her wherever she went, as if it knew she was beginning to regret their deal. One day, Zawadi decided she could no longer endure her husband's cruelty. She refused to visit the serpent again. When Juma noticed the money drying up, he grew furious. "Where is the gold, woman? Why are you no longer bringing riches to this house?" he shouted, towering over her, his breath reeking of alcohol. Zawadi stood her ground, her heart pounding. "I've had enough, Juma. I won't continue like this. You do nothing but sit and scorn me while I break myself to keep this family alive. I've sacrificed more than you'll ever know." Juma sneered, grabbing her by the wrist. Sacrificed? What have you sacrificed that I haven't already done? In that moment, Zawadi could no longer contain her anger. I slept with a snake, Juma. I gave my body and soul to a creature of darkness so that our children wouldn't starve, while you sat here like a king, doing nothing but drink and curse me. The revelation stunned Juma. He stumbled backward, eyes wide with shock. For once, he had nothing to say. Zawadi's voice trembled with emotion. I did all of this for our children, not for you, and I refuse to sacrifice any more of myself. You are no husband to me. With that, she packed her belongings, gathered her children, and left the house that had become a prison. She no longer cared about the gold or the wealth. Her freedom, her dignity, and her children were all that mattered now. As she walked away, she felt the weight lift from her shoulders, even as the serpent's hiss echoed in her mind. Zawadi's decision to leave her cruel husband marked the beginning of a new life. Though the road ahead would be difficult, she had found her strength. No longer would she be bound by the chains of greed, fear, or the judgment of a lazy man. Zawadi had reclaimed her life and her future, no longer willing to sacrifice herself for anyone unworthy of her love. Kindly like, share and subscribe and never miss out new content once we upload.